So today we are going to discuss FOMO versus Grails. Obviously, we're talking board games. Specifically, I want to talk about why you need to leave the crowdfunding alone. Maybe not entirely, but we've gotten carried away, myself included. And before the video is done, the few things I want to make sure we talk about is why I believe we should be putting more stock into adding Grails to our collection versus some of these bloated crowdfunding campaigns. I want to talk about why I'm not a big fan of a lot of these other YouTube channels that are pushing these crowdfunding campaigns while not also pushing some very great games that are already out there and available. And I want to talk about why our community and our hobby has really taken a significant left turn over the last few years and has went from a board gaming culture that also has crowdfunding to a crowdfunding culture that has some board gaming. And I think we need to go back the other way. So I know today's video is FOMO versus Grails, but I want to start by kind of giving you a background on where my collection is today. So this last year, I had broken 200 games and I was heading towards 300 really quick. Last time I counted, I'm down to 110 board games. And I've only started truly calling down in the last 4 or 5 months. So, I mean, you're talking about, 150, if not more games that have left my collection in a fairly short period of time, be it selling through eBay, Facebook groups, locally. So now that I'm down to 110, I am largely working on that one in, one out, rule. I try to, I'm really wanting to stay as close to 100 as possible. Now you kind of understand where I am on my collection. I started more in the D&D community. Board gaming was always something I kind of did on occasion. And I remember way back when I was younger playing a lot of D&D with friends. And, none of us really had any money. We just kind of got together and played, got some paper, most of the stuff we had pulled from the internet, or we were making up on the spot. And we had so much fun. Theater of the mind, kind of thing. And Dungeons & Dragons was so immersive for that reason. Years later, when me and my brother wanted to get back in and get a group together, we actually had decent jobs at that point. And we're like, okay, we're going to do D&D, but we're going to do it right this time. We got miniature trees, rocks, buildings, every type of creature you can imagine, all the different races, townsfolk, enemies, you name it. We went crazy. We could make entire villages and forests and stuff. And it was so cool at first. I'll explain. So, I remember these first couple games we did, and we were so excited about it, and we get the people over, and I remembered when I was younger, it was like everyone was just there. We were on that level. We were socially engaged in this cooperative storytelling journey, which is what D&D and role-playing is supposed to be. But with this, when we reapproached it with all of these miniatures and trees and objects, what we found was we actually lost immersion. We found like people would be sitting around the table and go to their cell phones, go to the sidebar, talk about what they did last weekend. We noticed we were breaking out of the story. It was like the first 30 minutes, everyone was just mind blown at how beautiful it looked and moving their pieces around, and everyone was loving it. But once you broke that first hour, that stuff kind of faded, because what we noticed is, though you had this forest and canopy and your little creatures are moving around the trees to take aim and talk to that character over there, it went from this brilliant theater of the mind experience where I'm picturing a 15-foot owlbear to now my owlbear is 8 inches tall, and it actually was less immersive. Which brings us to a lot of my issues with the current environment of this crowd-funded, bloated board gaming world that we now live in. You know, we've obviously had crowdfunding for a while now, but back in the day, what we had was the large board gaming industry that, you know, worked with these friendly local game shops and occasionally even big box stores, publishers, just making all of these connections. That was one of the reasons they went to conventions, was to meet more of these people and make deals to make sure their games were showing up in all the stores all around and helping drum up buzz and attention. You know, there wasn't a whole lot of Twilight Imperium level games at that point. It was, let's try to keep this game around $40, $50 tops and see how the market responds to it. Maybe we'll make, you know, a larger deluxe version if it does well. But they didn't typically start with that. Maybe they'll add expansions later if it does well. But a different risk factor if you made a $50 game versus a $150 game and the market didn't take to it. You know, it's, if I got a $50 game and I need to liquidate this, cut it down to $30, get them gone, you know, we'll take a little bit of a bath on it, but it is what it is, versus a $150 game. What are you going to do? You going to drop it down to 100? If it's not a good game, good luck selling it even at 100. And you just lost 50. Like, it's a whole different ball game. So what you got was board game publishers and designers that really tried to make good games. And I'm not saying new games are bad games, but what I'm saying is they don't have to make good games anymore. Back then they had to. If you made a bad game, it might get some sales, but it's not going to take off like wildfire. You had to make it good for that. With Kickstarter, they literally don't have to. With crowdfunding in general, for the most part, they're more focused on getting that first sell than making that game good. And granted, you have to, you know, figure out how to make that sell for anyone to even know the game's good. But the thing is, back in the day, if it was good, that's what created that cycle of it keep continuously selling and it being a success in the market. Versus now, they don't care about that. If it kills and people demand a reprint, they'll just take it to crowdfunding again. But for the most part, they've already got their money. They're moving on, you know? And most crowdfunding games suck. That's the truth of it. Like, legitimately, most suck. There's a good bit of them that are good, but then it comes down to, do you want good games in your collection or do you want great games in your collection? I used to have a lot of good games in my collection. I've kind of sliced that down. There's still some B tier, sure, but for the most part, I'm mostly A, if not S, sitting on my shelves these days. I don't want to roll the dice for a B tier at best. You know, not too many A tiers come from crowdfunding games, because it's back to that D&D thing I was telling you, where you're so focused on these little bitty, how detailed it is. Like, we have to have every miniature so well designed, detail, that it's got to look like it was handcrafted by a 6-inch Michelangelo. It's like, we're going to put on our little goggles and zoom in, and we're just going to dissect this thing like, well, first of all, this is a Saxon broadsword, looks two-handed. This guy is clearly a Highlander, wielding it with one hand like he's the second coming of William Wallace. My Emersion is destroyed. What's that? Oh, it is William Wallace. I'm back in it, baby. Greatest game of the year. You know, it's absolutely bonkers. It pulls us in, but it loses what the hobby really shines at, which is that social experience. And it's not to say that I don't occasionally like those games that bring us in, you know, like those really heavy Euros that you're almost playing an asymmetrical game. I like a few of those games on occasion, but to me, that takes me away from why I'm in the hobby, which is for that social experience. I want to feel like I hung out with my friends. I want to feel like I got to chat. My favorite games are those games where I get to kind of talk to someone just on a friend level in between turns and stuff. And I love that. I love to feel like we actually hung out and not that we just sat at the same table and we get up and go, woo, okay. Anyway, how you been, man? You know, like I want to hang out, man. I'm doing a social thing for a reason. I want to socialize. And so these games that zoom us in and take us away from that social experience, you might as well play solo, man. You might as well play video games. There is a place in the hobby for that. I'm glad it exists, but our hobby has become primarily that. That I'm not happy about. That I do think we need to change. And it's like, you know, for a current crowdfunding game coming up, I will be backing will be the reprint of Food Chain Magnate. Food Chain Magnate, not Magnet. You know who you are. Food Chain Magnate. It's a killer game. You know what's great about that game is you can literally go watch endless videos on YouTube, gameplay, reviews, you name it. You can legitimately have a pretty good idea if you're going to like that game before you actually sit down and play it and figure that out. It's not like every Kickstarter game where you're going to go drop, a couple $100? If you're lucky, see the game in 2 years, and it may completely suck. I'm going to be backing that. One, I kind of was hoping that Lucky Duck was going to throw the ketchup expansion in the same box. It actually appears they're not going to be doing that. They'll still be 2 separate boxes. You have to, pick, do you want the base or do you want it to include the ketchup expansion when the crowdfunding goes live? I could be wrong about that. That's just what it appeared to be to me. So it may not last in my collection because I'm actually part of the crazy minority that sees the Food Chain Magnate board and is like, oh, hell yeah, this is for me. I think someone said it has the sex appeal of Microsoft Excel, which, if you knew me, I'm into some Microsoft Excel. But my point is, I love the look of the original. I love the look of all those Splotter games that get a bad rep, because I think Splotter, what I was just talking about, does the exact opposite. They make kind of a sandboxy game, like visually. They make a game that's meant to be played in. They make a game that's not supposed to take you away from your social experience. Splotter games are incredibly social. Play bus and tell me you don't have a conversation with someone. You're going to be doing nothing but having a conversation with everyone at the table. It's a game that forces you to engage and communicate. Santiago, oh my God. All you're doing is communicating and engaging. I love those games. I love wooden components. I love cardboard components. You know why? Because you got to make a good game to sell that. Because there's not a huge profit margin in a bunch of cardboard and wooden components. I mean, there's maybe a decent profit margin, but there's not a bunch of profit between those components that you're selling in a game. If you're selling it for like $40-$50, which Food Chain Magnate obviously costs more than that. But, a lot of these games that are just wooden and cardboard, what makes it succeed and you make a real profit when it's said and done is because you made a good game that caught on and kept selling, versus with a bunch of plastic and bloat and $100 boxes, you can make a bad game and still make your profit. And that's the problem, is our community has gone so far off the deep end with crowdfunding that it's like, how do we even go back? And that's another reason I'm backing Food Chain Magnate, is because it kind of represents the opposite to me. Even though they're trying to give it a facelift and bring it up to, it's going to have 3D miniatures and all this. Whoop-de-doo. It probably won't last in my collection, but I'm going to genuinely give it a chance. I'm trying to keep an open mind, and I'm going to see how it does. I'm going to play both copies and see which I prefer. I have a gut feeling I'm going to stick with the classic, but it's fine. I'm almost backing it just to help support it, because it does represent the other way of crowdfunding, which is crowdfunding a good game. We know the game's good. Maybe not for everyone, but it's a good game. Undeniably. I will back a good game. I'm sick of backing bad games. And it's like, with my collection, though you see a few Kickstarter games back here, not a single one of them here that you see behind me, I backed. These were all purchased on the secondhand market, the Kickstarter ones behind me. And though I still have a few Kickstarters that I backed, one of them over there is because it was a friend's. He published it, and I thought it was super cool. And I actually have even house ruled it and made it a little tighter. And I need to get with him and kind of go over some of the house rules in case he does do another edition. I've got some good ideas, but that one's in my collection because I like it, and a friend made it. And then I have The Witcher Old World up there that I just haven't had a chance to table yet. I probably will. and then it'll probably leave my collection. I feel very confident it's not gonna make it. Just like, I don't know how many Kickstarters I've backed, a lot, but they're all gone besides those. I mean, I still have a couple role-play ones from back in the day, but they're not getting played anymore because I'm not really playing role-playing games. But the Kickstarter games just don't last in my collection compared to some of these brilliant games. And that's one of my issues with some of these YouTube channels that really want to push, this FOMO Kickstarters and want to go on and talk to you about all these different pledge levels and this and that. Guys, look, if you really want to explain to your followers why they should go check out a Kickstarter and back it, at least be real enough with them to say, stick with the base level pledge. And if you get it and like it, then move to something else. One of my recent Kickstarters, Thunder Road Vendetta. I backed the base version of the game. I got it. I absolutely love the game. God, I hope this doesn't offend the publisher or designer, but I always refer to the game as the McDonald's of board gaming. It's like the fast food, just real basic mechanics, like just nothing but fast food mechanics. But it's just fun. And you know what? Things don't have to be like this genius level, component and gameplay and mechanisms for it to be, a good game. They made a good game that was fun to play, and that is plenty. And I enjoyed it so much that I did end up upgrading to the Maximum Chrome version, which is up on the top of my shelf up there somewhere, and love the game. That one, I did the right way. I started with the base game. I liked it. I upgraded. I promise you, all of these games are going to be on the secondhand market because a lot of people are kickstarting it just to resell it. And you know what? That's just the world we live in. It is what it is. You can complain about it, but it's not going to change the fact that it can actually save you money. And what I mean by that is if you're doing nothing but kickstarting a bunch of shit games for these giant levels just in case you like it, how much money are you throwing out for all these terrible games? Because terrible games don't resell for a profit. You usually take a hit. I mean, good luck with Reichbusters. I've got friends with just boxes of Reichbusters that the wash they would have to take to get rid of them, it causes them to set on them just wondering what they're ever going to do with it. Because it wasn't a good game. I'm sure it's good for someone. All games are good for somebody. But Mythic Games missed. And Mythic misses a lot. But they really missed with that one. Because they could. Because you paid them up front. Why did they have to make it good? And a lot of publishers are going that way, man. And the more we keep giving them our money, the more we lose. You can back those games, and primarily you will take a bath because you've backed so many that turn out they're not good, because majority of them turn out not good. That's just how it goes. You just get a few good ones, an occasional great one. Typically, they're the reprints, and mainly crap. So it's like, if you are going to continue going crazy with Kickstarter, at least doing more base level pledges. And then if you like it, then going to the secondhand market to get it, you're going to save money, even if you pay a premium on the secondhand market. But what I recommend and what I do more myself now is I just don't back them at all anymore. I just wait and see once the game releases if it's, actually responded to well, and maybe even get a chance to play it first. And then if I like it, then I'll go to the secondhand market and get it. I'll pay that premium. That's still less money in the long run because I didn't buy a bunch of crap games that now, even if I were to make a profit on them, I've got to deal with all that time and energy to resell them. It's a pain. That's the difference in Grails, is you have so many games that are phenomenal. First of all, board games are not like video games. It's not like there's new graphic engines and stuff coming out every year. It's not like the hardware is getting better. No. In fact, some of the older games are even better for the reason I was talking to earlier, is where you get so detailed that it breaks your immersion and it breaks the social aspect of the game. To bring it back to Santiago, it's just kind of a dull looking game. I love it. Look at this board. This is the board. This is the whole board. It's not flipping out. This is what everyone's playing on. The whole table. Look at your components. Wooden components. Cardboard tiles. Well, you know, I gotta brag about these cardboard tiles. I don't know if you guys can hear this. You ever heard cardboard that sounds that good? It sounds like wood. My God, that's great cardboard. Anyway, sorry. The cardboard was different back then, is all I'm saying. You're dealing with these low budget components. It's causing you to create the game, you know, with your table. It's bringing the game here. So I'm communicating and I'm socializing and I'm actually having a great time hanging out with friends versus the game being so damn detailed that we're just all focused on that. And we're just, oh man, you see this? So yes, there is something kind of magic that happens with some of these older titles because they don't try to go over the top with the visuals and the 3D miniatures and stuff like that. I love 3D miniatures too, but not if it's gonna cost the game. Not if I'm gonna have a worse game because of it. Let's just have a good game first and let's upgrade to miniatures later. I almost think like all these publishers that have been making a bunch of C, D, maybe B tier games, we got to put them in timeout. You're not allowed to use plastic anymore. Go back to wooden components, go back to cardboard. Show me you can make a game with that. Paper money. You hate to even hear it. Make them make a paper money game. Make them make a game so good you'll play with paper money. Like, we just got to put these publishers in timeout and make them sit down and make a good game. And then we'll let you play with your plastic again. Then we'll let you get your 3D printer out and all that. We'll let you get some poker chips, your iron clays, all that. But first, you got to prove you can make a good game. A lot of these YouTube channels will literally say things like, this game may be in my top 10, but you know, like let's use Container for example. I'm not gonna push you to buy Container because it's out of print. It's hard to get your hands on. It's expensive. Anyway, what were we talking about? This new Marvel $500 all-in game. Oh my God, it's gonna deliver in 17 years. You're gonna get charged shipping at least 4 or 5 times before it's done. It's gonna suck, and you need to spend your money right now. Paid promotion. And that's if you're lucky and they're telling you. And first of all, paid promotion to me is like anything, and it's gonna piss people off, but to me, if someone sends you a copy of a game, might as well be paid promotion. I don't care if they gave you money or not. Everything has monetary value. Even if that resale of that game is gonna get you $30, that's still $30 in your pocket. And usually when they get these games, they're not $30 resale games. They're big elaborate boxes that resell for well over $100. My point is, you're still getting something of value and you're pushing your followers to that versus, you know, these Grails that are out of print. They're not sending me nothing free. I promise you, I've coughed up the coin for these. When I'm talking about a game that I just love, that I went out and bought and sat down and played and has a great reputation in the community, so I know I'm not just a weirdo that likes it, that other people like it, a lot of other people like it, I feel comfortable recommending that. It was not given to me. I was not paid for it. I was none of that stuff. You know, and even knowing people could affect things. Like, you know, Lucky Duck, for example. Devin from Devin Talks Tabletop, you know, I'm in his Discord. He's a super cool guy. He's working for Lucky Duck now. And I just went on about telling you why I'm back in Lucky Duck's reprint. So it's like none of us are free from sin. So I'm not throwing everyone else under the bus like I'm the way to go kind of thing. I'm just saying you've got to be transparent. You've got to make sure that you're considering these things so you're not misleading your viewers. You want them to take your advice, have a good experience, and say, I'm going to come back and listen to him again. So him, her, them, whatever. As content creators, when we help push this crowdfunding stuff that's honestly completely taken our community and our industry in a different direction, we're to blame too. The more we just service the cult of the new, the more that we can't complain that older games are better than newer games for the most part. We're rewarding the people that are making the bad games. And that's kind of how most of the world works, actually. But you get what I'm saying. My point is, let's talk about good games that are proven, that are older. Because the thing is, all of these content creators that say, oh, well, that's not accessible. That game's out of print. What? You can go to eBay and buy it right now. There's tons of copies. Yeah, it might be a little pricey, but it's certainly more accessible than a new crowdfunding game that best case scenario delivers in 2 years. Like, I just don't understand the train of thought with some of these content creators who act like, nah, you can't get none of that. Then how did I get it? I can get that easier than I can get something off of Kickstarter for sure. And I'm going to be able to do my research and find out if I like the game, first of all. Or at least if it's going to have a high probability of liking it. Also, another thing that's kind of nice about Grails is, since they have been on the market for so long, their value is pretty well established. So it's like, if I bought Container and then I ended up not liking it, I can just put it back on eBay. Its value's about the same. Very little is going to change in that small amount of time, you know, versus a Kickstarter. I spent a couple $100, get it, don't like it, nobody else likes it. Now the resale's less than I even put into it. And now after 2 years, I'm taking a bath on it. It's just crazy. Let's be honest here, you know? That's really what I wanted to discuss. And I'm going to start doing some videos where we're talking about Grails. We're going to hunt down the good cardboard. We're going to hunt down the golden cardboard and talk about that. Talk about what makes for the best games that have ever been out. So let's start there.